Welcome to Talkex, Ordinary to Extraordinary. On the show, we have an individual who talks about heart and mind, the combination, the integration of the heart and mind. He is a transformational CEO. He has worked across many regions, and today he will bring insights from his personal and work life to guide you on how you can move the next level up. On the show, we have the amazing, outstanding, handsome individual, John Iossifidis. Welcome to the show, Talkex, Ordinary to Extraordinary. My name is Rohit Basi, your host for the show. Thank you, John. Thank you for being here. Truly appreciate it.
That's a pleasure to be here, Rohit. My wife had a similar experience with you almost 12 months ago.
Yep, it was last year.
And she enjoyed the experience, but also we've known you a long time, so.
Yeah, and it's an honor finally I get to talk to you on a platform like this. So we'll just go into it straight away, John. The first thing is, I've gone through your profile, I've known you for a while. You have a wide range of interests, and even when your social media post comes, especially on Facebook or Insta, I usually call you Brad Pitt, James Bond, all mixed together as one. Very ice cool. That's what I tend to say. Yet with all of that, anyone could say you could be a celebrity. You instead are in the corporate world. You have been in the role of a CEO in numerous organizations. How did you get to this point?
Look, I was reflecting on that a little bit earlier, and I think it actually comes down to an ambition always to do more, never being satisfied. If you actually look at my personality profile, if you're using Gallup Strength Finder, elements around strategic come up all the time. Maximizer is really important. So never satisfied with where I am, but always looking for how can we do better or more. And actually one of the other key characteristics there is learner, lifelong belief in lifelong learning. I think that's one. I think number two, my father was very entrepreneurial and had his own businesses and things like that. So perhaps it was, a bit of nurture coming from that. And I think the third one really does come from, a belief of hard work will actually get you there anyway. It doesn't you don't just say, I dream of being a CEO.
Yes.
It seems to be that, yes, I've been lucky, but the harder I work, the luckier I am.
That's a very interesting point. You talk about hard work, because I tend to see people talk about smart work. I agree with the fact you need to do smart work, but hard work is definitely a crucial element. So if you look at your success, or even with times where things have not worked out for you, how much of it has involved hard work for you personally?
I think it's hard and smart work.
Yep.
And I think it also is about not believing your self-limiting talk that actually says you can't do something, as opposed to how you can do something. So I'll give you an example. I was a fairly elite swimmer.
Yep.
And competitive swimmer, but it wasn't natural talent. I obviously had a set and a skill of talent,
yep.
but in the context of getting to where I got to, it was because I was working on, I was training 15 minutes longer than everyone else. I was actually working on fine-tuning the details of starts and turns and reaction time and things like that. So it was the hard work as opposed to the natural talent and skill that actually applied. And if you tell me the difference between an Olympic gold medalist and someone else that has natural talent, I can actually tell you the Olympic gold medalist has actually worked hard and has the natural talent together, right? So it's actually a combination of both those things.
So looking at all of this, you've worked across many regions. You come from Australia. and then you started working in all these. What made you get out of Australia and want to go into these different regions?
Look, I'm a third culture kid. My parents emigrated in 1956, the Melbourne Olympics at that time. I'm 61 born, so you can guess my age now, if you can do mathematics.
Let me calculate.
Growing up in Australia at that time, it was large immigration and things like that. But as a result, you also knew that there was more to the world than just Australia.
Yeah.
And Australia is a great country, and it's where I'm from, and I'm proud to say that it's where I'm from, and it's actually helped me think about the world and given me an education and a way to think about the world. But I also have a culture that is actually a Greek and a strong Greek culture. So from a heritage point of view, the two combine, and I guess again, true story. When I was a young child, 5 years of age, go to school. You've seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? Where the lead character is sitting down to have their lunch, and it's very different to what everyone else is eating, and they get ridiculed. So, when I was sitting in Australia, I'd be called a foreigner.
Yes,
right.
I can feel that.
We were also lucky enough, we came from a middle class upbringing. Every 2 or 3 years we were able to go back to Greece and spend what was the Australian summer, a Greek winter in Greece. And I'd land in Greece and I'd be called a kangaroo. So somewhere between the two, right, it was you actually had a realisation you didn't necessarily fit in anywhere, or you fit in everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that aspiration to sit there and explore the world actually came from a really young age.
What you just said, I felt what you felt, because being in the UK, then origins, heritage being Indian, the mission, the mash, and finding a place where you can mingle much easier. And I think this is one of the places, UAE, which was much easier to integrate than any other place which I've come across. You've been here in the UAE for a long, long time. You've worked with Mashriq, Noor, now Al Ghurair, and maybe in the future somewhere else, and you have your own things which you do at the side. What keeps you here in the region? 23
years in the region.
Wow.
I came with a multinational institution. I've had I've worked with a number of companies since then. I genuinely love the way that this country has developed and evolved and is at the forefront, and you can actually say that you've been intimately involved in the evolution of the country from a small city. And both of them, Abu Dhabi and Dubai, were small cities, to being on the global stage, and I've been fortunate enough in the businesses that I've been in to have actually been able to say, I helped do this, I helped put this up, whatever it is. So you can actually say that I've contributed.
Yes.
And I genuinely believe that I continue to contribute directly or indirectly.
Because I've seen articles of yours in Arabian Business, Bloomberg, Reuters, Gulf News, The National. In the financial world, I could literally say you're a celebrity. How does it feel to be a celebrity in the financial world?
I think I'm pretty grounded, to be honest, and I don't mean that in a. I feel very lucky to be in the privileged position that I am, and very thankful, full of gratitude for the opportunities that have been given to me. So I'm not sure how that I would consider myself a celebrity, and to be honest, Roy, it's not something that sits comfortably with me at all.
So one of the things which I noticed about you is, John, even when I met you, I remember I met you in Inspire. I remember you being in one of the sessions, being one of the students in yoga, and then I did some work for Lisa. I've always found you very grounded, and what I would say is a lot of gravitas in the way you come across. How do you achieve that? Because that really makes your personas come out. How do you do that?
There's a belief that I've had, and perhaps it's a lesson learned early on from a leadership point of view, and that's really that if you need to be able to respond to a situation, which means a considered response, as opposed to react to a situation. And I am actually very considered in virtually everything that I do. My wife sometimes, it drives her crazy. I am Libran, right? So balance is really important, but that actually means that I will also argue both sides of a situation. I will actually consider someone else's point of view. I have the ability to actually put myself into somebody else's shoes and communicate with people from all walks. And the lesson learnt was really not to react, and because a reaction is often emotional and it doesn't serve you, and it also means that if I react emotionally, the likelihood of you reacting emotionally is also pretty high.
Very true.
Right? So by staying considered, focusing on the issue, not the person, those sorts of things are actually really key to being able to remain focused, grounded, realistic in terms of what we do.
It seems to me it's very much of a Stoic way of doing things, which is interesting to see. Is if you have that kind of personality, when things are not working out for you, or what people define as failure or challenges, how do you deal with those situations? Because you've got years of experience. I'm not just talking about work, I'm talking about life itself. So how do you...
You're talking about my age.
Yeah, it's fine as wine. How do you manage yourself so well in situations which are tough and rough?
There's a few things here, and again, it's about respond and not react. I think a couple of the other lessons along the way in terms of life in general, but leadership or programs that you're trying to do or things like that. When things don't go your way, you set a path and a direction. A strategy is a path and a direction. It's made on certain assumptions, and you're headed in that particular direction. But when you made the assumption, the wind may have been behind you, and you were sailing in a straight line. You had the spinnakers out, and you were going at 30 knots quite rapidly in a straight direction. But then the wind changes direction. You've still got to go from A to B.
Yes.
But you've got to change course. So you change course based on the circumstances around you, not necessarily losing sight of the end goal.
Okay.
I think that's number one. I think number two, from a difficulty or a challenge point of view, I always look for the learning experience. What went wrong? What could I actually do differently to make sure it doesn't happen again? I was actually sharing a story with a friend of mine, and you recently, in terms of you've had a bad experience at a restaurant, and you some people would vow never to go back to that restaurant again. And complain and make a fuss about it at the restaurant. Yet I would be the sort of person that would walk out and say, look, I won't go back there again. But I'm really positive about the experience because I've learned something. Right? I've learned something, which is don't go back again.
Not a place for you.
It's not a place for me. This doesn't actually work. And I think the third part of framing this is really around, my mother used to say, when times were tough, this too shall pass. And it's true, right? I mean, the bad times or the challenging times, this too shall pass. The good times, this too shall pass. Right? So these elements in terms of the reality of the world that we live in, nothing lasts forever.
True.
So I'm always looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. I never believe that it's going to stay dark forever. So I think there's an element of positivity as well. And at a personal level, in terms of managing the stress that often comes with these things, there's a number of tools that I use. I've always been someone that would actually self-reflect and was quite introverted. Not introverted, but internally reflection and
it's like a
introspective. But more recently, it's actually become in terms of in terms of meditation.
Yes.
And a genuine belief that actually sort of is a formal way of being able to deal with the stresses that come with your the daily life.
Yes.
Coupled with if you really need to get that frustration out, a good gym session actually it works out as well.
Which comes to my next point is, you've had a number of successes in life. What is your perception? What do you define as success?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because I think when I was young, it would have been around having the house, having the money, having the car, the watch, material things. Obviously having the family and those sorts of the career and all of those. And I actually got to my mid to late 30s and I actually had all of those things, but realised that I was unhappy. You can actually have everything and actually not be happy from a mental point of view. So I think I redefined my purpose, and it started at that point in time, but actually my personal purpose today I would actually define as having a meaningful and material impact, positive impact on those around me. And that can actually be, it starts with your family, but then it actually goes to your friends, and then it becomes with your workforce or your colleagues at work, and then it becomes when you become more senior, you can impact more people in the workforce, and then you can actually impact your clients, and you can help impact your communities that you actually work in. So that's how I actually define success today. It's in terms of the impact that you can actually have on one individual all the way through to large communities. I mean, the organisation I work for now, and I'm purposely not using the names of the organisations, because we're here to talk about John as a human being, not John representing any particular organisation. We have 32,000 employees. If you actually just factor the impact that you're having on 32,000 directly, but if you then think about it from the multiplier of their families, you're starting to get to some pretty big numbers in terms of being able to have an impact on people. They're the big numbers, but you actually realise you can touch somebody directly in a small way, and you don't even realise that you've actually done it sometimes. So they're the things that are actually equally as rewarding.